Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are talking about Sentinels and their Valorant team and talking about their 2023 season and how it went down and if this team will improve. Sentinels had a very tumultuous season. I would say it was up and down, but there really weren't that many ups. It was mostly just downs. Looking like a different team from the start of the season to the end of the season. It was quite a lot of turnover for this team because of the results that they were getting. It was a very crazy season for them, and Sentinels as a company are in a lot of financial turmoil right now, so they might not even have a Valorant team in a couple months. We'll see, but for now we're under the assumption that this team is going to build a new roster and will be participating in the VCT Valorant Champions Tour in the Americas League for the 2024 season, and they will be looking to improve and do a lot better. Sentinels at the start of Valorant's history were one of the top teams in the entire world, winning the first international tournament in VCT Masters Reykjavik all the way back in 2021, and since then they have not been able to reach those same heights. They've had some players come and go, they've had some coaches come and go, and last season they came into the 2023 VCT Franchise League hoping to be one of the top teams in the entire world. And on paper, they did look pretty good. They had the likes of Zekken from XSET roster, Tens previously on the team, Saucy and Pankata from the previous iteration of Lao that did win a championship in 2022. And they also had Def, who was also from XSET, as their IGL, as well as Marved as their extra, but he didn't come in until later in the season when Sick was dropped. So they came in with high expectations, and especially through the org, the owner, Rob Moore, clearly had big expectations for this team and really wanted them to do well. But they ended up having a disappointing performance at Lock and losing their very first match of that tournament, and it was single elimination, so they got right out. But it was a single elimination tournament, and they ran into Fnatic, who won that tournament, so it's not really that big of a deal. So they were hoping that the regular season in Americas would be a lot better. Unfortunately, that was not the case. They did place 7th in the Americas, going 4-5 during the regular season. Again, having some roster turnover, with Tens having to sit out, with Marved coming in from the bench, Def retiring from professional Valorant halfway through the season. It was a lot of turnover, and of course their coach, Psycho, getting fired mid-season after like 3 games. So maybe if that roster stuck together a little bit longer, at least that original iteration of it, maybe they would have had some better results, but they just couldn't find the chemistry, and they kept changing players, so things had to change. So their best placement throughout the entire year was 4th in last chance qualifiers. They had a decent performance there, but they didn't quite make it to champions. Wasn't entirely surprised that they didn't make it. I was thinking, they might have a chance with the roster that they have. They do have some decent pieces, but I just didn't see them overcoming the likes of Cloud9 or even Crew. I mean, at the time going into that tournament, I probably wouldn't have said that, but Crew ended up performing very well in the last chance qualifiers. Very random, especially after them not winning a single game during the regular season tournament, but alas, Sentinels did not make it. As previously mentioned, they placed 7th in America's 4-5 record during the regular season. 17th to 32nd was their placement at Lock-in. This org has won a championship, which is more than most can say. As previously mentioned, they won VCT Masters Reykjavik, the very first international tournament in Valorant, all the way back in 2021. So this org knows what it's like to win, and they want to get back there. And the most recent news for this team is that Tens has renewed his contract. I was a little bit surprised. I was thinking maybe this is the year that he moves on, but that is not the case. I'm not entirely surprised that he's staying either. I do think Sentinels really like to have Tens, mainly just for their brand. He's a very popular figure in Valorant, and he is a very talented player as well. So maybe this is the year that he gets back to form, and I think he's perfectly capable of doing it. John QT from M80 is rumored and basically confirmed to be the new IGL for Sentinels. There has been no official announcement, but that is what all the leakers have been saying. And John QT should be a very good addition. He was on that M80 roster being the IGL for that team, and they performed very well in Tier 2 last year. And IGLing was definitely this team's weak point throughout the entire year. No shade to Def, no shade to Marv, but those 2 players just aren't top IGLs in Valorant. So if this team wants to get back to a championship, they need to find someone like that. They're hoping that John QT can do that, and I think it's possible that he is that solution. Marved is likely out. His contract with the team is up. He did just sign on for that 1 year. I don't think he expected to play at all. I think he expected to stay on the bench and just chill out in Toronto. He couldn't even sub in for Tens when he was sick for that one match because he didn't have a visa. He couldn't get into America. So Tens had to play while he was sick and had like a broken finger or something. So I don't think he really expected to play. I think he kind of just wanted to like stream and like collect a paycheck, and I don't really blame him for that, but take that as a warning to any player that wants to be a six man. You might end up actually having to play if you're just signing that contract to like hopefully just chill out and just get paid. It might not go the way that you're expecting, so always be mindful of that. But Marved is a really good player, and I was happy to see him get a contract with the team during the 2022 season. I was a fan of him when he was on that Optic roster where that team just did magic. Marved is a very talented player, and the record did get a little better once he subbed in for Def and became the team's new IGL. Even when he subbed in for TenZ, and he wasn't playing the same role as TenZ, but he was a welcome addition to that roster. But I'm also not totally surprised that he is not renewing his contract with them. If he does join another Valorant team, I would expect it to be one that I guess is a bit more structured and one where he doesn't have to be the IGL. And I'm not surprised that he is not staying on this roster. It was a tough situation for him going from not playing Pro Valorant at all, kind of wanting to take a break from it, to signing a contract as a six man, and then all of a sudden you're the IGL and you have to save this franchise, basically. So really tough spot for Marv, but I think he made the best out of it. Now moving on to the total 2023 player statistics of each player that played. Aside from Def, I didn't include him because he didn't play that many maps and he is now retired, so I didn't find it as important, and also I only have a certain amount of space on this board, so thought that I would include Marved, Saci, Pancata, and TenZ and Zekken. And as I said before, on paper, this roster is not bad. I just think this roster had a really big problem with chemistry. I think these players, to a certain extent, like they did like each other, and you could tell that in their Sentinels videos. You know, they seemed to be happy around each other. But in terms of when it came to actually playing, it didn't seem like they really found the chemistry that you need to be able to be a top team. Saci and Pancata, they're very talented players that came in to an English-speaking team after, you know, playing on a Brazilian team. That's got to be really tough. Obviously, they put in the work and learned English pretty well. But even if you learn it as quickly as you possibly can and you're good at it, there still is going to be that communication issue. That's just kind of a reality of the situation. So I would expect them to not return and probably move on to a Brazilian team. MIBR maybe. Maybe they return to Loud. Loud has a lot of contracts up. So maybe they make a change to that, or maybe they stay on another North American team. We will see. Anyways, looking at each of these players' stats, we have Zekken, who in my opinion was their best player, and if they let him go, I would be very surprised because he was the most consistent player. He was really good for them throughout the year, and that is evident within his stats. Zekken played 32 maps. He had 548 kills, 499 deaths, 181 assists for a KD ratio of 1.09. Zekken is a solid flex player, a solid duelist player. He played some Jet, he played some Raze during the season, and he was really good for them, and he was definitely the bright spot throughout the entire season, and I think that the org should be happy with him going forward. I'd be very surprised if they drop him because some of their team is going to be very happy to pick him up. He's a very talented player. And you probably want TenZ to be on the Jet or on the Opping character, but Zekken can fill that role if needed, but usually you would want to have him on Raze because he's very good on that character, and then you could have a really good 1-2 punch with TenZ and Zekken. That could be a very good duelist combo. Speaking of, TenZ played 23 maps. He did sit out on a couple because he was sick, and then he hurt his finger, didn't break it, but he had to sit out for a decent amount of time. He did make his return later in the season, and I was happy to see that because there was some worry that he would maybe just be dropped from the organization altogether, but that did not happen. He played 23 maps, he had 357 kills, 369 deaths, 151 assists for a KD ratio of 0.96. So not totally off of the even one number for the ratio there. He played all right. He had some really good games, and then he just had some games that he looked lost. TenZ, for me, I think it's all about confidence with him. I think when he's playing really confident, when he's relaxed, when he's playing well, when he's in his element, he's a very talented player. His technical ability alone is nearly unmatched. Like, just watch this guy like go on aim labs or something. Like, a lot of these players have really good aim, but TenZ is definitely up there with he's among the best when it comes to aim, I would say. He's very good, and there's a reason why this organization has kept him for so long. But I think when he's nervous, when the going gets tough, he kind of just gets in his head a bit and just can't seem to overcome his own worry. At least that's kind of what it seems. I'm not trying to like psychoanalyze the guy, and I don't know him, so I don't know if that's like 100% the case, but that's what it seems like. Once he's not playing at his best, then he just kind of crumbles. But hopefully going into this season, he can figure that out and he can really become the player that he truly is. Next up, we have Marved, who was not their IGL and then was their IGL once Def was dropped by the organization and retired. He played 22 maps. He had 302 kills, 333 assists, 154 assists for a KD ratio of 0.9. Marved playing smokes. He is one of the best smokes players in the entire world. At least he was when he was on Optic, and I would still assume that he has that amount of skill. Maybe it didn't shine through too much on Sentinels, but I would more fault that as just the team not being as good as the roster that he was once on. But he's still a very good smokes player. If he does get picked up by a different team, I would expect him to be on that role again. I don't think he fits as an IGL. I know he's done it before. He did it on FaZe and now he's done it here, but he's just not a top IGL, and when you're in tier 1, you need a really solid IGL to be able to go far. But these are very decent numbers for a smokes player, so I don't fault his performance at all for the team's downfall. And then we get to the two Brazilians. We have Saucy, who played 32 maps. He had 458 kills, 486 deaths, 238 assists for a KD ratio of 0.94, which is lowest on the team. Mainly playing the initiator role, Saucy just didn't look entirely comfortable on this team. Neither did Pancata. Saucy, he played pretty well. He played all right down the stretch, and he had a decent LCQ. But I do think that maybe it was the language barrier, maybe it was missing home. It was some factor where I could tell that the two Brazilian players on this team just weren't entirely comfortable. You know, maybe they were having fun, but it just wasn't the same as being on Loud, where they were just such a good team when it came to chemistry and communication and everything. And then you get to this team where the IGLing's kind of a mess, even with Def. Def, he's a decent IGL, but on Xset, he was splitting those IGL duties. So him being the top IGL for this team, it just didn't really work out. And I definitely think that that shows in the performance of Saucy and Pancata, because this team was not able to get the most out of them. Maybe they stay on the team. Maybe that happens. Saucy, there's been rumors that he might retire at some point soon. I haven't seen any confirmation of that. It might happen, it might not. We will see. But I do expect him to probably leave Sentinels and then maybe go to either back to Loud or MIBR, maybe one of the South American teams, who knows. But I kind of don't see either of these players staying on Sentinels. I just don't think it's really beneficial to either the org or them. I think they would both perform much better if they were on a Brazilian team. And then we have Pancata's stats. He has 417 kills, 437 deaths, 132 assists in 32 maps for a KD ratio of 0.95. He played a bit of Viper, he played a bit of Killjoy, he played a bit of Cypher. He's a solid player, but I just don't think that it really worked chemistry-wise for this team. And now we're moving on to their maps, looking at the record and their win percentages on each map. And this is definitely where the problems start to arise, because they really don't have a map that they're fantastic on. They have a map that they're good on and were undefeated during the season, giving them credit. But they didn't play that map that much. And there really wasn't a map that they were particularly dominant on. There's just a couple that they have decent records on. Looking at Haven first, they went 0-3 in the 3 times that they played it during the season. Their attack win percentage was 33% and defense was 39%. Really bad numbers there. Bind was one of the maps that they were good on. They played it 3 times. They won every time. 100% win percentage right there. That's very good. An attack percentage of 59 and a defense of 55. Really good numbers right there. Can't fault that. Pearl, they played 6 times, 2-4 record for a win percentage of 33%. Attack was 44, defense was 49. Pearl was definitely a thorn in the side of this team. I remember, right before Tens got benched for a bit, Pearl was one of the maps where they had a really bad loss on, and that was, I think, what prompted the changes for Psycho to be fired. But Pearl is being taken off of the competitive queue, so might not have to play that at all, so might not need to learn it. Who knows? Split, they played 7 times with a 2-5 record. Their win percentage was 29%, attack was 48%, and defense was 43%. Really not good there. Lotus, they played 3 times, 1-2 record, so almost at even, but they have a 33% win percentage. Attack was 47%, defense was a really bad 37%. So that's another map that they definitely had a lot of struggles on and just could not figure out. Ascent is a different story. They had a 2-1 record on it with a win percentage of 67%. Attack is a mediocre 49%, but their defense is a is a 50, so, lower than you would want it, but they only played the map 3 times, so at least they won most of the time. Fracture is tied with their second most played map next to Pearl. They played it 6 times, a 3-3 record, so 50% win percentage there. Attack was 40 and defense was 60, so solid CT side, but the T side is pretty mediocre, and that's why they have a 3-3 record. Icebox, they did play that one time. That was the infamous match against Energy. They have a 0% win percentage on it, obviously. Attack was 17, and they didn't win a single round on defense. Now, they only had to play Icebox once, so maybe these numbers would be better if they played them more, but either way, the one time they played it, it was a really, really bad showing by this team. And that was right after a pretty solid win against 100 Thieves. So their map pool was a problem throughout the entire year. And I think that is pretty evident because of their lack of really solid IGL. When you have a top IGL, you're able to have a really deep map pool and to have 2 or 3 maps that you can really lock down. All the top teams in the world have a map that they're super, super solid on and have a really deep map pool spread out like that. Sentinels just didn't have that, and that is definitely evident from their just lack of really having top IGLing. So John QT definitely has his work ahead of him. If he is as good as he can be, then this team should be in good shape, but it has to work. If it doesn't work, then this team's going to be mediocre again. If they don't, they have a lot of talent, and you can see that from just on paper. And if you look at their stats for the season, none of them are really atrocious. From the way that people talked about Tens, you would think that he was one of the worst players in the world, but he really wasn't. He had a decent KD ratio. You would want it to be over 1, but it wasn't terrible. Zekin played really well throughout the entire season. Marved, not the most kills, but he's a smokes player, so it doesn't really matter that much. Sassy Ampik had not terrible numbers either. Not great, but not terrible. On paper, this team was pretty good, but they just didn't have the good IGLing. They didn't have good chemistry. They just couldn't put it all together. And that was the problem with the roster, was that they have a lot of talent, but not a lot of structure. And hopefully their coaching staff can, find some of that, and their new IGL, John QT, hopefully can find that as well. So that's what the org's hoping for. We'll see if it happens. I hope that this team improves. I think that they can. I think if they keep Zekin, Tens, and they fill out the rest of the roster with some really solid players, I think this team can be really dangerous again. And I think that they can be one of the top teams in Americas and potentially in the world. And I think it would be great for Valorant if they did, because every time they play, they get a lot of views. They're one of the more popular teams in the world. Riot's probably hoping this team is going to be good. I know Sentinels as an organization is, and how the fate of their organization might depend on it. So we'll see what happens. Either way, it's going to be a very tough Americas division for this team. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think Sentinels will be good next season? Will they return to the glory of 2021? Or will they have another flat year and just not be good and have a bad map pool and bad IGLing? Let me know what you think. It could go either way. It really could. Anyways, thank you guys very much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.